and I am the co-founder of Respond to Racism in Lake Oswego. And this is my friend and my awesome collaborator, Amy Waterbury, and she's the co-founder of LO for Love. On behalf of both of our groups, we'd like to thank you for attending tonight's City Council Candidate Forum. And we'd like to welcome our panel of wonderful candidates. Thank you. We'd also like to welcome and acknowledge any candidates or elected officials who are in attendance. If you are, would you stand, please? And wave. And you can speak to them afterwards. Just very briefly, a little about who we are. I've lived in Lake Oswego for over 32 years. And Amy has lived here for over 10 years. We have both had or have children, kids, in the Lake Oswego schools. We both serve on city boards, and we're deeply invested in this community. As many of you know, or maybe you don't, both of our groups formed following racist incidents involving our neighbors and fellow community members that compelled us to take some action. Respond to Racism formed following a road rage incident in the spring of 2017, in which a white Lake Oswego man verbally assaulted an African-American man who was a Lake Oswego resident and with racist slurs.
An LO for Love formed in the fall of 2016 in response to racist incidents in LO schools. These included a racist comment on an LO high school affiliated Facebook page and an anti-Semitic flyer posted in the school cafeteria. These events prompted the LO high school student newspaper to focus a full edition of their paper on race. Brave students telling their stories shed light on how students of color were experiencing discrimination in both subtle and overt ways in our community. These events and others that have occurred since then have spurred a groundswell of community advocacy, engagement, and support among residents and among city and school officials to chart a more inclusive course for the future of Lake Oswego. That brings us to why we're here tonight. We're hosting this forum because we want to play a role in helping voters make an informed decision about the future of this city that we all love. Our groups represent an important voice in the city. The demographics of Lake Oswego are changing. At the time of the 2010 census, the non-white population of LO was 10.7%. The latest statistics from the Lake Oswego School District say the non-white student population is 25%. Even tonight's slate of candidates for City Council is historic in its diversity.
Lake Oswego has a lot of strengths as a community. Our schools, our neighborhoods, our parks, and the heart and spirit of its people. That's just to name a few of the strengths. However, we do not have a great reputation when it comes to issues relating to diversity, equity, or inclusion. This dates back to the property ownership laws that were racist and exclusionary in the 1940s, the 50s, and yes, the 60s. These exclusionary laws and practices were explicitly promoted and advertised in our Lake Oswego real estate brochures and stated in property deeds, which they likely, or probably, I would say, that's how we got the famous name. What is it? Oh, come on, say it louder.
They grow Negro.
Right, you all know it.
Sadly.
And it's not a good one, sadly. But in this reputation is perpetuated today by headlines, as we've seen the last few years. Most recently, a racist note passed by white students to a black student in the junior high school. The sad consequence of these types of broadly publicized incidents, and the more subtle incidents that go unreported, is that it often means ethnic minorities don't feel comfortable living here, which does not serve anybody well. This is a real loss for the entire community, especially when people move here to go to our schools, and then they also leave. Sadly, we're all here tonight, and many of us show up each month at the Respond to Racism meetings and many other related events and meetings because we care deeply about this community. We like to help change this reputation of exclusion, and most importantly, we like to help change the reality behind the reputation. We believe a large majority of the Lake Oswego residents also want to see this change. City Council plays a key role in charting the course for our city. This includes fostering a welcoming and inclusive environment for all community members. There are 3 City Council seats that we will all be voting to fill in the upcoming election. There are 7 active candidates. The top 3 vote getters will win the 3 seats. We're very fortunate, though, to have so many candidates who have a passion for making Lake Oswego a great place to live. We'd like to thank all of them for being here tonight and for being willing to step up and dedicate themselves to civic service. Also, we'd like to thank the Lake Oswego United Church of Christ for generously opening up this space tonight, and as they do every month for our Respond to Racism meetings.
Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. If you haven't already, please take a moment to silence your phones. Please feel free to get up and stand if needed. 2 hours is a long time and we will not take a break. Bathrooms are to the right as you exit the sanctuary. Go down the main hall and they're right on your left there. And there's also a water fountain out there. We are videoing tonight's forum and we plan to post it to the website and Facebook pages of Respond to Racism and LO for Love. Okay, let's get started. We'd like to introduce our 2 esteemed moderators for the evening, Anushka Nair and Paula Posadas. They are both residents of Lake Oswego and members of the Lake Oswego School District's new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Anushka Nair is a senior at Lake Oswego High School and founder and executive director of Student Community Action Group Enough is Enough, which focuses on institutional inequalities. She is also a member of Respond to Racism Steering Committee. Paula Posadas is a co-founder of LO for Love. She is a mother of 2 teenagers who are students at Lake Oswego Junior High and Lake Oswego High School. For her day job, Paula is a human resources professional in the technology industry where her work has included driving initiatives in talent development, diversity, and inclusion. With that, I'd like to pass the mic to Anushka and Paula, who will briefly share the format for the evening and get us started.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Lily and Amy. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. Here we go. For each candidate, all right, so for each candidate, you will have 1 minute to introduce, each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and offer an opening statement. We'll start on the audience's left with John Whitland and continue to the right, down the row. So after opening statements, we'll then ask the candidates 4 questions with varying response times, ranging from 1 to 4 minutes. And we'll let you know each time how much time is allocated to respond to each question. We'll alternate who answers first by going every other candidate. So John Wendland will go first with the opening statement. Ms. Mbouk will go first with question number 1. Jackie Mance will go first with question number 2, and so on. After the second question, we'll begin lightning round questions, which we'll explain to you when we get to that time. At the end of the questions, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And for the audience, the candidates have not seen the questions before tonight. So this is the first time that they're hearing them.
So Terry Kramer and Kira Wen will be our timekeepers. For 1 minute response times, they'll give you a 10-second warning, and then when time is up, they'll hold up a red end sign. For 2 minutes or longer response times, they'll give you a 30-second warning, and when time is up, they'll hold up the red end sign. When time is up, in addition to the visual red end sign, you will also hear a bell. We thank you in advance for making the job of our timekeepers easy by adhering to the time allotment. In the event that a candidate needs a question repeated, we will repeat a question up to 2 times. We will not be taking questions from the audience. We encourage both candidates and community members to stay around afterwards and take the opportunity to meet and greet and engage in conversation. So now we'll start our conversation with the candidates. The candidates will first start by introducing themselves and giving an opening statement. John Wendland will start, followed by Daniel Wen, right down the line. You each have 1 minute for your opening statement. John Wendland, we invite you to please begin now.
I start when I start talking. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see the sanctuary full. As a former school board member for 8 years, I tried my best to look after the 7,000 kids in our district. As a business owner, a quarter of my employees at Portland Bindery and are part of the family of Portland Bindery, where I own my company, are minorities. And as chair of the nonprofit Reading Results,
Can't hear you.
I support the disadvantaged low-income students that struggle with reading towards the path of academic success through the lens of equity. So I try to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. Here tonight, I hope we find an emotional center. I hope we agree that diversity, tolerance, respect, and inclusion are not partisan political views. I, me, them really needs to become we, us, and all, both in our personal relationships and in our local government relationships. Our mantra should be Oswego together. Our collective goal should be open dialogue, execution of practical solutions, and I think Oswego where all means all.
Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Wynn. I wanted to say thank you for the outpouring of support here in this room. It's just amazing to see everybody here. For me, this is personal. This is something that I feel very personal about. I mean, it's the whole reason why I'm running. You know, as a person of color, I'm very concerned about the future that we're leaving for the next generation, the example that we're setting for our children. As a father of 2 children, my 7-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old daughter, they're watching. They're watching all of us. The decisions that we made, the example that we leave for them is going to be extremely important. From my background, I grew up in Kansas, Washington. It's a community very much like Lake Oswego, where there was virtually no diversity. I remember as a child looking at coming to school. I mean, simply coming to school and bring my lunchbox that didn't look like anybody else's. And I realized, that I didn't fit in. When I opened up my lunchbox and my mom had prepared the sandwich, it wasn't in a Ziploc bag like everybody else. But those are things that are small examples of what it feels like to be in a community that doesn't feel like it's part of the rest of the community.
Hello. Yeah, good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. Like Daniel said, it's very important to me. I've been coming here for response to racism because I have my child who is here and who's also a person of color like me, and I am a business person in Lake Oswego. I'm walking the talk like I'm the executive director of the international school where there is diversity in the stuff, in everything, and I believe that Lake Oswego is no longer Lake No Negro because I live here. This is my town, and in my town there's certain things that's not normal, and that's why I'm standing up. That's why I'm running, because this is a good town of good people, of people who look at the room. Everybody is here to support diversity, and that's why I'm running. I'm glad that you are here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Donald Matterthorpe. Thank you for inviting me. Also, this is the largest evening event of the campaign that I've attended so far. I guess I'll tell a brief story. I grew up in Lake Oswego, and I can remember when I was just a boy, 6, 7 years old. The Beatles were on the radio, singing Help and Hard Day's Night and things like that. And I was in the living room, and my father was there, and I asked him, "Dad, why is every song a love song?" And I'll never forget his reply. He looked up at me and he said, "Because there's nothing else to sing about." And that's a sentiment which at the time I absolutely did not understand. But today I think he's right. And I'm glad that we're all here to talk about these issues, because that's the only way we're going to move towards greater love with it amongst each other. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I know many of you, and some of you I don't, but I'd be happy to meet you afterwards. My name is Jackie Mans. I'm the incumbent, and I wanted to say something that has affected me. A year and a half, 2 years ago, I met with Amy Waterbury, and we talked about this very subject. Less than 2 weeks later, I had a talk with our police chief about this. I said, look, this is something going on in our city. We need to be having this discussion. And he said, you are absolutely right, which is not something I immediately expected. Then follow that, soon after, Respond to Racism was put into place, and I thought, this is it. We are in a moment. This is the time to take this by the hand. A group of us, along with Respond to Racism, Willie Poinsett, the school district, the police department, city staff, went down to California to the Museum of Tolerance, brought back tools, formed ideas, continued to bring this subject to the fore. What has been accomplished in less than 2 years is nothing short of miraculous, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Emma Burke. Thank you so much for coming. It's really encouraging to see all the outpouring of public support for this issue. Even that 91 people applied for the new school districts committee is awesome. I'm proud to be one of those members of the 22 that got chosen for that. I'm also proud to be a member of the Respond to Racism group. I think it's very important work they're doing. I remember one of the activities we did was to see how disenfranchised we are as people. And it was everything from socioeconomic factors, colors of our skin, education, a lot of different things. And even though I grew up in poverty, and after my divorce, again, got into poverty, I was still in what was considered the most privileged group. And so it's just interesting how, as we looked around the room, it was basically the darker you were, the more you were disenfranchised. I grew up in a community that was 40% Hispanic, so racism was new to me when I moved to Oregon. I now live in a condo with a lot of diverse neighbors, which is awesome, but I think we really need to bring that multi-diversity and the love for that to the greater community, because that's one of the reasons I'm coming. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Randy Arthur. I recently completed my service on the Planning Commission of Lake Oswego, which is also the Commission for Citizen Involvement, which I chaired for 2 years. I'm a civil litigation attorney in private practice, and I always have had a passion for community service and leadership, including in diversity and inclusion issues. I noted early on that the elevation of non-dominant cultural lawyers in my firm improved the practice that we offer to our clients. Working with many others, I helped plan the 2001 and 2011 Oregon State Bar Convocation on Equality. Since 2010, I've served on the executive committee of the Oregon State Bar section on diversity. In 2011, I was nominated by the bar as a champion of diversity, and I'm presently serving as the 2018 chair of the Oregon State Bar Executive Committee on Diversity. I'm running for City Council to help Lake Oswego remain a welcoming and exceptional place for all. My experience, knowledge, and relationships with the community have prepared me well to make a constructive difference on the council. Thank you.
Thank you all for your introductions, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to jump into our first question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the first question. We're going to start with Ms. Senenbut and go clockwise to Daniel Mettersdorf, and so on.
Donald Mettersdorf. Daniel.
Right. Donald Mettersdorf will be second. All right, so the first question is, what value do you believe diversity, equity, and inclusion brings to Lake Oswego?
I think diversity and equity will bring social justice to Lake Oswego. It will bring as a perspective as we need the epistemology from different people, because it takes a village to do something, to raise a child. That's what we do back home. We say back home, but it takes different folks to make
it really helps when you all stand up one at a time.
Yes.
Very hard to hear.
So, yes, so I mean, it's a diversity and inclusion is the best values we can bring here. And to make it happen is, like, in my platform, I'm saying that people who work in Lake Oswego should be able to live here, from the barrister to the police officer to the everybody should be here, and it brings a world that of friendship, of good leadership, because we listen to different views. Because we cannot only listen to one narrative. There are multiple narratives there, and diversity inclusion bring that. That's my view.
Thank you.
I guess I'll say that I think it starts with diversity. Lake Oswego historically has not been a very diverse community. I acknowledge that. And the communities that I've lived in my own life, which have been more diverse, and that includes most especially San Francisco, California, and some time in London, that's where you go out and you meet people in your workplace, on the sidewalk, in the schools, in the restaurants, who come from different backgrounds than you. And that's where you make friends with those people, and you have the opportunity to understand where they're coming from and what they're about and their perspective. And that's something which, quite candidly, I didn't really get growing up here in Lake Oswego, but which I did at later on in life, and which I think is sort of the starting point, the foundational stone to inclusion and love and the various things that come from it. There, I guess I'm done.
What value does EDI bring to Lake Oswego? What value doesn't it bring? Let me rephrase that question. To me, to have a strong community, we need a variety of voices. We need a variety of people. From the equity standpoint, access for all children, for an equal education. From a diversity standpoint, people. I can put this into terms of finance, or yes, we need people to keep our city vibrant and strong, but really, it boils down to the fact that we need to hear from all voices. And with this particular value question, we have to make sure that we are opening the doors to everyone. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
The value that diversity, equity, and inclusion brings to our community is priceless. Not just with race, of course, that's probably what we most need to address here, but anything that we consider people are others, whether it's religion or the sexual preference and marriage rights, things of that nature. I'm very proud to be the first female candidate who is openly LGBTQ. And I feel like that was probably what needed my inclusion for the school district committee. Of course, the racial issues are very important, but every day around the nation, kids are killing themselves when they don't feel accepted by their own families because of their gay status. So I think it's very important that we just create a very, very welcoming and inclusive environment within our whole community, our whole world. Everyone stands to profit, and actually it's the Caucasian kids and members of the community that profit most when they're in a diverse community. I'm very fortunate my kids are at Oak Creek, which is the most diverse school in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Being a lawyer, I like to define my terms. And as I understand it, equality refers to treating every individual in an identical manner. That may not take into account institutional and systemic disparities that are barriers to progress. Equity seeks to address that by addressing unrecognized, unintended, and unwanted barriers to opportunity. Diversity often I think of as a picture of a group of people with differences, but diversity by itself doesn't allow necessarily for opportunity. And inclusion is great. We need inclusion and diversity, but inclusion may not be enough because it means kind of like you need to fit into my dominant system and my dominant culture. You need to change and fit into my system. What I think we need is transformation, which is what Bruce Poncet talked about when he appeared at the Commission on Citizen Involvement on September 24th and talked about the need to, an opportunity to transform our relationship with each other. So I hope working together we can make significant progress. Thank you.
I think is this working? Oh, it is working. Yeah. I think the world now is a global place, and the way that Lake Oswego fits into the global place is that we do need to be diverse. We have to have equity. We have to have diversity. How are we going to get that? Well, I think it's by having an inviting community where we all work together. And I know on the school board, we looked at, our mantra was all means all, which really means that there's people with all kinds of different needs, whether it's educational needs, whether it's racial, whether it's gender bias, whether it's everything that makes every little person, big people, older people, we all have to work together. And one of our mantras was we need to find out the needs of these people, whoever needs what their needs are, and figure out solutions. I think Lake Oswego is getting to the point now where we are 25% diverse. When I grew up here, I don't think we're even 2% diverse. It's changed, it will continue to change, and it's a good trend. We need to be global citizens, we need to accept everyone everyone, and we need to work together as a group, as a community, to solve the issues that are out there. And I think we're smart enough to do that. I think we're willing to do it, and I think we should be doing it.
I think the value of diversity really makes us stronger. I think at this point, we all recognize that the community's changed, as Johnny said. I look at, look across the room, I look at the schools, I look in our businesses, I look at my business, looking at, thinking about how do we bring more voices to the table? How do we bring the varied experience that people have to help us make better decisions? And I think that that's what the value of diversity brings to the city. I think in city government and school board and all of these positions of leadership, we've got a responsibility to be able to provide that voice, to be able to create that opportunity, to be able to, I think the best way to increase diversity is to set the example. When people see people that look like them in positions of power and leadership, they're more, they seem that they understand that that could be me also. And that again is something that I think that with the city, that's what I hope to champion, is really to now that we recognize that this is an important issue, always an important issue, let's take it to the next level. Let's implement some solid action plans so we can actually get there. I'm so glad that we all acknowledge that. That's a good start.
So thank you all for your heartfelt responses. Our second question was generated by a group of students from Lake Ridge High School. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. We'll start with Jackie Manns and go clockwise to Emma Burke and so on. And here's the question. Recently, students at Lake Oswego High School hung up racist and anti-Semitic posters around the hallways and graffitied slurs onto the bathroom walls. These incidents are all too common in this district, where 25% of students identify as non-white, and students of color often report feeling alienated and tokenized. Teachers do not always demonstrate an understanding of equity issues. School administrators often minimize discriminatory behaviors and pretend nothing is wrong. And students can act as they choose without facing repercussions, all of which creates a hostile and fundamentally unfair learning environment for students of color. Many students learn these behaviors at home, and school employees take their cues from the larger community. How do you plan to use your platform to change the culture in order to create a safe and comfortable environment for all people, specifically students of color?
I'm going to start that by saying I do not have all of the answers, and I won't pretend to have all of the answers. But what I can do, and what I have been doing as a city councilor, is to bring into our culture the idea that we have to change, that we must hire front-end people who look different than me. We must hire people who, on our police force, on our fire, in our